Hey guys, Doug with Nomadic Rifleman. Today we're going to be talking about the AR-15. I know this is a dividing issue in our country today, so I would urge you, with any of the comments in this video or on this subject regardless, try to conversate and argue in a way that is respectful and not demeaning to the other person's opinion. Most of the people that have opinions on the subject have them out of good intentions, and it's important to understand that. With that being said, I hope you enjoy the video and I hope it gives you some exposure to some information that you maybe haven't thought of, at least maybe not in this light. Alrighty guys, before we have this conversation, I want to talk about what is an assault rifle. There it is, the big term. First off, an assault weapon is a made-up term by the left to demonize AR-15s and AK-47s. An assault weapon is a made-up term. What we're talking about are assault rifles. I know that seems small and unnecessary, but it's an important distinction. An assault rifle is a military term meant to describe an intermediate caliber weapon that is select fire in nature. That means a weapon that is chambered for a smaller bullet than a traditional rifle, so that the ammunition is less powerful, but more importantly less weight and less recoil than older standard rifle ammunition like 8mm Mauser or 30-06, things that were used widespread throughout World War I and World War II. Intent being to make the load of the average infantryman lighter, since most people's fire wasn't effective past 300 yards anyway. They didn't see a big issue in stepping down the capabilities of the individual rifleman. So this would be an example of an intermediate cartridge. This is a 5.56 by 45mm NATO round. This is an M193. This is the old US round that was used. I really like this ammunition because it's cheap, readily available, and does a fairly good job whether it be planking on the range or for defense. That being said, is the AR-15 an assault rifle? Well, technically speaking, no, it is not. An assault rifle, by definition, would have to be select fire. Most AR-15s on the United States market, or the civilian market, are semi-automatic only, which means that they're safe, which would be this selection right here, safe, which means that nothing can happen when you press the trigger, and then you have fire, which, when you press the trigger, will fire a round, the action will cycle, pick a new round up, and then you must release the trigger, fire another round. So technically, by definition, no, an AR-15 is not an assault rifle. However, practically speaking, arguing that it's not an assault rifle is simply just a waste of time. Practically speaking, every M4 and M16 lives 99.999% of its life on safe or semi-auto. Very, very few times is there a reason that someone would flip that switch to full auto. So practically speaking, it does operate very similarly, and to call it a neutered assault rifle would not be very misleading. But no, by definition, it's not an assault rifle. Take it for what you will. So, for the first myth I want to talk about is this designed to rip flesh apart? Yeah, it's a rifle. All rifles are designed to rip flesh apart. But let's go a little deeper than that. Here I have a 5.56 round. I don't have handy a cartridge to compare this against, a traditional rifle round, but a 2-second search on Google will show you a 308 or a 30-06 round compared to this. This is a very small rifle cartridge. It doesn't possess the power that would normally be found in a rifle. Reason being is it's intended to be a smaller and lighter to carry ammunition choice. That's the whole point of an assault rifle or an intermediate cartridge, is that it is less powerful, but powerful enough to maintain rifle energy. So no, it is not some crazy big bullet that's just gonna take down a house and all the people in it. That's just not how these work. They are effective weapons, but don't kid yourself thinking that this is some crazy option. Otherwise, all the moose hunters in the world would use this round. But you go tell a moose hunter that you're going to use a 5.56 on a moose, and they'll simply laugh at you. Alright guys, the next thing we're going to talk about is that no sane person would ever choose to use an AR-15 or similar styled weapon for home protection. This is just simply not true. There's a lot of reasons someone might choose an AR-15 over, say, a shotgun or handgun for home protection. Now, of course, what anyone decides to use for home protection is a personal decision, and I'm not trying to say that if you've made a decision to use a pistol or shotgun that you're wrong. I'm simply talking about the reasons why someone might choose to use an AR-15 style weapon. So, very first thing is these are simple and light recoiling, reliable weapons. There's no pumps, there's no weird oddities. It's simply pick it up, run the action once if you have to, if you haven't had it loaded. If it is loaded, you simply pick it up, flip the switch to semi, and then use the weapon system. And you now have 30 rounds on tap that you can fight with to save your life. Shotguns are not that simple. Handguns often have much less capacity, and the rounds that a handgun shoots are much less powerful, and both shotguns and handguns tend to overpenetrate much more through barriers like drywall, insulation, 2x4s, the like, compared to AR-15s. AR-15s do not have a very large likelihood of overpenetration due to the high velocity but low mass of the projectile. So there's a number of reasons why someone might use an AR-15. Another thing about AR-15s that makes them very, very well suited to home protection is the ease of modifying the weapon, better suiting it to home protection. For example, attaching things like red dot sights, which make using your sight picture easier and makes your chances of missing lesser, which increases safety for everyone around you. It's easy to put one of these on. Weapon lights like this, which allow you not only to illuminate a target so that you can make sure that you are indeed engaging a threat and that you have a safe backstop, they also help in blinding or less lethal use of force, whether that be intimidation or just shutting down a person under white light. You'd be surprised how effective a blast of 800 lumens is in the pitch black. So, for a number of reasons, the AR-15 is an excellent choice for home protection, and simply saying otherwise is at best ignorant and at worst fraudulent. And people really shouldn't lie to people about something that's serious. Should you have access to rifles like AR-15s? Oh boy. So, yeah, you absolutely should have access to rifles like AR-15s. I understand that might not be your opinion, but hear me out for a moment. The whole point of the Second Amendment is to give teeth to the rest of our rights. We all agree that you should have the right to free speech, freedom of religion, right to due process, all of those other rights. The only thing that physically maintains that reality is the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment is already very infringed upon, and people don't realize that there's already a number of restrictions on the Second Amendment, all of which are unconstitutional. But that being said, a lot of these people simply just don't know. And it's easy to see something like an AR-15 and be intimidated by the reality of it. You see them in movies being fired automatically, and if that's all the exposure you have to those types of weapons, it's easy to see why someone would be intimidated by that. But once you become more familiar with weapons, you better understand their capabilities and the reality of what they are, and you start to better understand the arguments that you hear from the pro-gun side. I'm not going to go down the arguments that the pro-gun side makes. I'm going to talk about it from a different angle, hopefully an angle that you haven't heard yet. So, a lot of the people that make these anti-gun arguments are from the left. And they make most of these arguments are made out of fear, and that's understandable. But the reality is a lot of these people are the people that need access to firearms the most. I'd love to wish it away, but bigotry, racism, sexism, these are all real life things that people deal with every day. And there's no better equalizer in the world than a firearm. And arguably, one of the most effective firearms you can have access to is an AR-15. If you're going to find yourself under any kind of crime because of being a minority or being of the weaker sex or the fairer sex, not trying to sound sexist here, a firearm can equalize the tables between a 100-pound woman and a 250-pound man. Not much more is as empowering as that. An AR-15 can give that single mom, that transgendered American, the ability to save their life against an attack. As far as government regulation, that's simply inappropriate. The whole point of the Second Amendment is to be a check and balance to the government. And if you're on the left side, you've seen how the government can not always be in your favor. Whether that be from the right aspect of overtaxation or tyranny, or from the left's aspects of tyranny against people's lifestyles, whether that be homosexuality, race, or immigrants, whatever, both sides should be able to see why that check and balance is important. It's something that we should always fight to maintain in this country and in countries abroad. The fact that other countries have lost those rights should not be celebrated. It should be something that is looked at and frowned upon. We should be scorning other governments for taking these rights away from the people. The people should have say in the government, and the reality is the Second Amendment is the last check and balance in place to maintain that. Alright guys, so those are a couple of the myths and the reality surrounding the AR-15. If you found this video informative, I'd really appreciate you considering subscribing. This has been Doug with Nomadic Rifleman, because everywhere deserves good and capable riflemen. God bless.